say, forgive me, thank you. I only just wanted to say, I have some familiarity with Bermuda myself, and it's primarily, I know it's, I'm sure it's a good place to protect intellectual property rights, but I mean the primary reason people locate companies in Bermuda is because it's a low tax area. That's right, isn't it? And so what you're doing is rolling up royalties in Bermuda in a protected tax zone. Now, that's not illegal, but the fact is, so now if I compare this, so the discussion we had with Starbucks was so in their tax policies they don't use offshore tax havens, but you do. That is part of your strategy. And I'm just pointing out that it's somewhat different. You don't. That's fine. So you're rolling up money in Bermuda. Do you remit that by dividend to the UK, or just piling it up in Bermuda?
No, the tax we pay in the UK is a function of the activity we do in the UK, and our accounts are published.
I know, but I'm asking about Bermuda.
Yeah, absolutely. All I can say is that the tax that we pay in the UK has nothing to do with affairs of Bermuda or anything else. It's entirely influenced by the way we set up in Europe, with one centre in Ireland to serve everybody, and the activities that we do in the UK, similar to other countries that aren't Ireland in Europe, are similarly compensated and structured. So the people on the ground are helping people make the most of the web. The people in Ireland are helping to operate the systems and sell advertising to the businesses that want to work with us, and that's how operations are set up, and that's personally what I focus on.
Mr. Britton, you have been really helpful, and I appreciate that, but this session was about tax.
Yep.
I think you knew that before you came, so it's slightly odd, again, that we've got a witness who doesn't understand tax. Have you got people behind you who do?
I was personally requested by name to come to the committee.
Well,
that's
not by us. Were we? Yeah, but we didn't ask that particular.
You asked for me personally, and I actually had to reschedule because I was in Germany,
right.
so
okay.
I came especially.
But can we just get an answer to this question that I think Stephen asked, which is whether there are there any check-the-box elections made below Bermuda for IRS purposes?
And sort of for the third time, I don't know what that phrase means. I'm sorry, I'm not a tax expert, and I don't focus on the US. What I can do is find out and share with you afterwards. That's all I can do.
In essence, it's the revenue that's coming into Bermuda, and how that is being treated from a tax perspective.
I'll happily answer, but I'll have to have somebody else do it for me.
Austin, Fiona.
Yeah, I was quite amused actually. The first thing I looked at briefing for this meeting had an ad by Google, and the first one was take home 90% of your pay, which turned out to be a complicated tax avoidance scheme for IT contractors. But you've only made money advertising a tax avoidance scheme there.
Only if you click.
My real question is, I know that Google, we think a lot about search engines, but I know because I've been personally lobbied a few times by Google about them trying to get more into public sector provision of computing, and I know that you've already set a toe in the water with, is it Hertfordshire County Council or one of the councils in that area? Can you talk us through if a public sector organisation in the UK actually contracted with Google for the provision of computing services, how would the revenue be booked, and what costs would be booked against it, and therefore what tax would be payable?
The vast majority of our revenue globally comes from advertising rather than from the kind of computing services that you talked about. So it's in excess of 90%, I believe, comes from advertising. So, but we do have a small but growing business providing things like email and document production and collaboration software, and so that's small, and it's similar to the Gmail service and so on that consumers have.
Well, so, in the lobbying, I'm told that the whole of Los Angeles and I think the whole of San Francisco run their IT on your platforms, and the sales pitch is that they would like lots of the UK public sector to do the same thing. So clearly this is a drive for you.
Yeah, it's a small but growing business, and lots of companies and some local authorities are using those services. It's not the entire IT solution. It is the Gmail that you're used to as a consumer.
What I'm really interested in, suppose a public sector organisation contracts with you for a certain amount of revenue, what costs will be put against that revenue before the profit is struck on which tax is payable?
That's not a core part of our UK business, but well, I imagine...
Is it a part... I mean, have I been lobbied by some ghosts, or is it a part of a UK business or not?
It's part of what our teams in the UK would do would be, and it's a relatively small effort, it would be a handful of people in the UK focusing on encouraging customers
I've
to use
met
that.
this handful,
Sure,
and I'm
that's
asking
good.
what happens
I'm
if
glad
I
to see
do
they're busy.
business with them.
When you do business with those guys, I think the revenue and cost would be similar to the way that the advertising business is structured in the UK. I will confirm if that's incorrect because it's a small part of the business, but the innovation that drives the economic value of that business comes from our teams in California in the US who are building and developing, in this case, Gmail and other associated products for use by millions of consumers and increasingly millions of businesses. So that would work in a similar way. And our view would be that the economic activity, the innovation, the computer science that drives that is in the US, and therefore rightly the majority of the profit and the tax should be in the US.
Would it be a good approximation to say that whatever profit is made on that service would it effectively end up in Bermuda and possibly in the US, and therefore should the UK public sector factor that in when it's thinking about who to do business with, whether it's going to get taxed back or not? Would that be a thing that we ought to think about?
I think the UK public sector benefits from competition, including Google, and can select whatever products and services it wants to use. We think ours are good and they work well and they're chosen by a range of people, but anybody buying software and services should make their own choices on these things. But it is the case that the people we have in the UK and the UK limited business we have in the UK pays tax and pays all of the tax that it's required to do. And we look at whether that's an appropriate amount based on if we didn't have that business but we had to outsource to third parties, what would we pay? And that's how we arrive at the numbers which we pay the team in the UK.
And one last question for me. You're the UK Chief Executive, are you?
No, my job, as I said at the beginning, is Vice President for Operations across Northern Europe.
Okay, yes, the wetter countries, I remember now. And where are you based?
I live in London, but I spend my time around all of those countries.
Where are you paid?
I'm paid in my bank account in the UK.
Right. And are you an employee of Google UK or what?
I think I am because I live here, and until a year ago I was running our business in the UK.
And do you get any compensation from any other part of the world?
My compensation would come through my payroll and so on, which comes from here, but I'm paid my bonus, etc., as an executive of Google Incorporated globally. So my compensation is based on the company's overall performance as a
via the UK PAYE system.
We paid, however it's paid, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Stuart.
Mr. Britton, can I just ask you, if you had a more orthodox structure between the UK company and Ireland, you had a sort of proper disaggregated business model, and you had a different pricing structure to the extent that, I see the last 2 years you've actually, on a turnover of £600 million, made losses on both occasions, which suggests, in both financial years, which suggests that your pricing structure is wrong at the very least. But if you had to pay tax on profits, would that persuade you to leave the UK?
Firstly, can I correct what you said? That in the last 2 years, we have paid tax because we have earned an accounting profit.
Tiny in relation to your turnover.
No.
And tiny in relation to the UK business.
The UK
What's
business.
the UK business?
I'll tell you the numbers again if I may. In 2011,
you paid £8 million in corporation tax. In 6 years, on a £6,000 million turnover in revenues in the 6 years to 2010. That's not exactly pushing the boat out for the taxpayer, is it?
I don't quite recognise the figures you said there. Last year, the revenues in the UK were £396 million. We made an accounting profit of £31 million, and we paid tax at 26% on that accounting profit, which is £6 million worth
Mr.
of tax.
Britton, we're not naive. The revenues of the UK are those that you choose to put through the UK. What we're interested in is actually the revenues you earned in the UK.
I think
you look, just for the avoidance of doubt, the figures I have, and you're of course free to challenge them if you wish. A loss of 6.1 million in 2011, and corporation tax purposes a loss of 0.9 million for 2010. Can you just ask?
No, those are not the figures I have, and I'll happy to give you a written submission on the figures. But there is an issue in that We pay tax on accounting profit. We then are required to deduct stock-based compensation, so the statutory number that goes into Companies House would be a loss, but actually we paid tax on £31 million worth of profit, which is £6 million, and the tax rate is 26%. That's on a revenue of £396 million, which, as I've explained, we think it's appropriate because that's about the amount we'd have had to pay if we'd gone to third parties and asked them to do the same services. The people in the UK are not doing the innovation, they're not doing the computer science, they're not doing the product development,
what are they doing?
The people, as I explained, they're working to help users, consumers, and help businesses get the most out of the internet. But I think the point here is not about sales.
No, come back to a specific question, if I may, because we can meander along different paths.
Try not to meander. I apologise.
Yeah. Can I ask you, were you to adopt a more robust business model where you're actually, God forbid, making a profit?
We are making a profit and we're paying tax.
In the UK, well, a real profit rather than just part of a tax avoidance scheme, which this clearly is.
I have to say we are paying the tax we're required to under law, and we're not avoiding tax.
You are avoiding tax.
Yeah, I think you are avoiding
within
tax. But my question is, would you leave, and if you left, if you had to pay a higher rate of tax on a decent profit, which this isn't, where would you go?
I think the issue of your understanding here is about, if Google was a British business, if Google had been founded in Cambridge by Larry and Sergey, I think we'd be in a very different place here because, the profitability rightly would sit with where all the technology and innovation happened. But Google's not a British business. Google is a US business. The activity that happens in the UK, even if you were to describe it as sales activity, which is not exactly what the people do, we could still go and get that activity from the open market at the kind of cost which we're paying to UK limited business.
UK activity end up in the Cayman Islands.
Bermuda. The profitability, regardless of where any profits end up,
that's where they end up.
That's
what's
so the shareholders in Google UK can't access that cash. I mean, what's the market capitalisation of the company in Bermuda? Do you know?
It doesn't have a market cap, it's not a traded company. Google has a market cap, and that's Google Incorporated, which is an American company, as you know.
My point is, if you buy shares in the UK company, you're not necessarily going to be able to easily access...
You can't buy shares in the UK company because it's a wholly owned company. You can buy shares in Google Incorporated, which is an American company.
Okay, an American company.
Yeah, so you can buy shares in Google Incorporated and participate as a shareholder.
Can I just finish this? Can you just finish answering the question about where you would go if you... are you basically saying that if the tax take was higher, that it wouldn't be viable for you to continue to operate in the UK?
No. What I'm saying is we pay the tax we're required in every company, in every country in which we operate. Every country, every government, just as you, has the right to set the tax rates you want to set. Every company has to decide how to organise. I hope I've tried to explain to you that the way we're set up reflects how our operations occur. I can't comment on any hypothetical proposal. We run the business actually in a robust way. We think we do it in a way that's appropriate. It's certainly legal. We pay all the tax we're required to do. We also have an obligation to shareholders, which is to ensure we do that cost effectively, and so we make choices, such as I've described it, in order to make those two balances.
Let's think about the interests of those shareholders, because I'm interested in what happens to the money which ends up in Bermuda and how the shareholders can get any benefit from that. Because it seems to me that were that money to be transmitted to your shareholders, you would then have to pay tax on it, would you not?
Yeah, as I say, I don't.